okay? I am a God Trump fan. God's already proved to me that he's behind Trump, and that's the reason I'm behind Trump, okay? But I went on the Trump train Sunday, and it made me realize something. I hadn't got started a mile, and I passed one of my neighbors, and he done that to me. And right before I got to the very end, 150 yards before we come to the end of it, right down the road, and I had another lady. And I said, wow. Then the beginning and the end, them people were trying to send me to hell. You know, that when I went to school and you done that to somebody, that meant we'd like to see you go down, okay? That was disturbing to me that, you know, I really believe that the people that's in this room, that if the other party come by doing a train, okay? You know, whether it was sarcastically or not, okay? We have allowed, as Christian people, we have allowed evil to separate us. And there ain't but one way back. It ain't but one way back, and that's repent. We got to repent so that God will heal our land again. Our farmers had a terrible year to get. I've hollered Flammy from the beginning, okay? I mean, you read the Old Testament and New Testament, and I mean, hey, we ain't doing right. He ain't doing right towards us, okay? I mean, we got to get in line with him. And this is a politician night, but that denominator that's way higher than any politician that can decide how anything is going to turn out, because it's going to turn out like God wants it, whether you like it or not. You can join him, you can be against him. The more you're against him, the harder heartaches you're going to have. So you might as well surrender and be with God. And that's what we got to do. And it takes godly people to do that. And that's the reason that I am fighting so hard to make sure that this man right here stays in office. Because, see, we got another denominator in here, and he's sitting right back over there. You'll hear from him in a few minutes. But this man put that man in the position that he's in so that he could fight for the farmers. He fights every day. Matter of fact, I tell him he goes to prison. He goes to prison every day. He has to go in his room. His wife sends him in there. And he has to stay in there in front of a computer. And he don't have 2 minutes to call his friend. Okay? He'll check, say, I'll call you back in a minute. But he's on that computer screen. He's in jail. I went over there and done a little work around his house, stayed over there all day long, and come out in 1 minute and had to run back in. Okay? But I've never seen anybody fight as hard for us because, see, our federal government, it's against our farmers. Okay? It is against our farmers. If he won't fighting, trying to keep them to put every kind of regulation in the world on the farmer, that the commissioner does not want on the farmer. They want to come in and tell the farmer what they can and can't do. And Dr. Joe Reardon wants to say, no, you're going to suggest it to them, okay? They're trying to shove it down their throat, and them two work so hard. I hear a lot about it. I work real close with them. I work for NCDA, I work for DOT, I work for DOT Bridge, I work for Harnett County Schools, I work for Harnett County. The tightest, niched division that the state of North Carolina has is North Carolina Department of Agriculture. They are the biggest. When you go to the grocery store, that little sticker up there that says North Carolina Department of Agriculture, making sure that when they weigh out your food that you're getting the right amount. You go to gas pumps, making sure that you're getting the right amount of gas. All the processing plants where your food comes from, they got inspectors in there making sure that they're doing it right. Forestry. When forest fires start and when the farmers want the timber, every bit of that is done through the North Carolina Department of Agriculture. And that's just a few of the things, okay? I mean, there's food and drug, and they make sure that all the Dollar Generals and all them, that their food in there is safe. They go around, they have people check the stuff. I mean, it's just on and on. You know, DOT don't do nothing but keep the highways up, which is a job. I ain't saying any job, because they did. But they all got one thing to do.
Questionable.
And they do it off a tight budget, because he wires me out about my pricing all the time. On a very tight budget, and it's the tightest ship in North Carolina that I've seen run. He's a farmer. He takes it to heart. His component says, you know, he's all about the big business and all that stuff. Well, guess what, folks? When you got as many people in the state of North Carolina that has to be fed 3 times a day, that's big business, okay? It might be done, the little farmers growing it, but it's big business, and they got to make sure that everybody's doing it. It's big business. It can't be done on a small scale. I just see how hard, and he's a very dear friend of mine. I see how hard he works. I see, look, he can hire you and go do a job and never hire you again. But when he needs something out of you, you don't never get rid of him. He's always calling you. He's always having you to do something. Once he becomes his friend, you can't never get rid of him. So that's a wonderful thing about him. So at this point in time, I'm going to let him and Dr. Joe Reardon, I call him doctor because it makes him important. First job me and him ever had was in the food center in Fuquay, stocking shelves on Tuesday and Thursday night, so we'd have enough money to take Wanda out on the weekend. Okay? And I tell you how he got his start now. We were stocking shelves, and the fella that owned the food center, he took a liking to Joey. He didn't take one to me. I had to finish stocking shelves, but he taught Joey. He took him back there and taught him how to cut meat, and that's where he got his start. And he meat cutter, then he went to inspector, and then somehow or another them two hooked up, and they ain't you ain't never unhooked, that never. So Joey Reardon and Commissioner Troxler, y'all, there you go. Come on out here where you can see it, and Joey, I'm gonna let you have it.
Well, I had to write a little bit of stuff down, but no, Ricky and I, we go way back. We were friends in high school, even before high school. So we go way back, gosh, I don't know, 40, 50 years, I guess. So we've been friends a long time. And so it's my privilege to be here. I've known this guy for a long time. We're going to have a little bit of a conversation. You know, we're going to let you get in the car with us, and we're going to carry you for a little bit of a journey. But I will say, because I want to tie on to what Ricky said, and I'll try to keep it straight. You know, God puts people in the right place at the right time for his own doing. There's not such thing as luck. It's called divine appointment. God knew that we needed a godly commissioner of agriculture 20 years ago. And he said, I'm going to take a farmer to do it. Well, I've been at his right side for 20 years and watched him make decisions over a lot of things, none of which didn't involve other people. And the one quality, and you'll see this in this conversation, throughout his entire career, he put people's lives in front of his own, with family and grandchildren and 2 sons and Sharon as a wife. But he made this a 24/7 job because he cared. He had a passion for this, and I believe God put him in the right spot. But God didn't make it easy on him, because over the last 20 years, we've had a lot of challenges, haven't we, boss?
Absolutely.
I'm going to switch hands because I'm going to have to hand you a mic. But we've had a lot of rain here the last few weeks, right? And with the storm down at the beach, 20 inches of rain. I'm going to carry you back a little bit. But North Carolina suffered from two horrible hurricanes with Matthew and Florence. And me and the commissioner sat down and we talked about the impact that was having on row agriculture and animal agriculture down east, and I know you have somebody from that area. And as the commissioner and I, we sat there and talked. He said, there's three things that's going to drive what we do throughout this as we do it. And I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about it. The three things, he said, first, we're going to do what's right for the environment in North Carolina. Because it's not our generation, but it's future generations that's got to live here. The environment's number one. We're going to do the right thing from a public health perspective. We're going to look out for those that understand it, those that don't, because we're going to do the right thing for public health. And we're going to do the right thing for our North Carolina farmers. Commissioner, talk a little bit about the leadership that you provided, the decisions you made as we navigated two of the worst hurricanes that we had in North Carolina.
Joe, I thank you for that, and I thank all of you for being here tonight. This is my 7th statewide campaign. I'm running for my 6th term. I've won 5 in a row, so I want to do it again, and I want to do it again for the right reasons. And Joe's mentioned some of the things we've been through, but those 2 hurricanes that we had, first Hurricane Matthew, and it set record rainfall rates, and it was awful. There was no question. I remember getting off a helicopter after we had flown all day with tears in my eyes, knowing what I had seen below me down there that day. So we set out to try to help people, and we talked about how do we recover from this disaster and don't let this define agriculture in North Carolina and not do environmental damage. We have got an economic catastrophe right here before us. But how do we stop that from being an environmental catastrophe too? So we started looking at ways that we could handle the mortality, particularly the poultry mortality we had, and there was a lot of it in there. I mean, it was ugly. But we learned how to do composting. And before that, we had learned how to do it in the department by helping Midwestern states with outbreaks of high-path avian influenza. And we were convinced that we could once again go in and compost all of this mortality and not bury it. Eastern North Carolina has got very shallow water tables, so every time we bury something in that water table, it can lead to catastrophic things down in the future. So we went in and learned how to compost this mortality, and for the first time, Joe and I went to FEMA and said, now this is our plan and we need you to participate in this and help us with the composting material that it's going to take. So we were the first state in the nation to get FEMA to help us do this work. And how many loads of composting material we bring in? 1,800 tractor trailer loads or something like that. I mean, that's how bad it was. But in the end, we completed that job and completed it quickly. And once we did the composting work, 30 days later, that house is sterilized and the composting material can be spread on the land as fertilizer. So we prevented an environmental disaster. We sterilized the houses, and we used the remains as fertilizer for crops. So it was a win-win situation, and we were really proud. And then along came Hurricane Florence. I never thought I would see anything worse than Matthew, but that was the worst thing that I have ever seen in all my life. So we had other problems to deal with, but we still had poultry problems that we had to compost. But out of it all, we grew. We grew as a team, we grew as a department, and we grew as people. I can tell you that my chief deputy commissioner has got 52 years of service with the Department of Ag, and we were discussing one day, what is the proudest thing that we have ever done, and that proudest thing was to help the people come out from under these disasters. And I've always known that doing this is a calling to help people. So I've had an ample opportunity in this job to be able to do that, and it's been, so rewarding. The first disaster program I did was in 2005, and I had just gotten set down in the seat, and the General Assembly said, go to the mountains. They've been washed away with 2 tropical storms. Design a program to help those folks, and here's the money. We never had done a program like that in the mountains, so we set out doing something like we would do for Harnett or Johnston County. It didn't work. The crops were different, everything was different, so we came back and we designed a program to help these folks in the mountains, and for months and months I moved people from eastern North Carolina to the mountains to do the determinations, and it was just about Christmas when we got those checks out. And I can't tell you how many phone calls we got with people crying, saying, we would have lost our farm, we would have lost our house. I can never thank you enough. You made a difference in my life. Now, if that's not enough for you, I don't know what will satisfy you. But we've done it over and over again, and it's really rewarding. And after Florence, I would say that Florence was probably going to be about like this year. The crop damage was awful. So we went to the legislature and we got $250 million, and we designed a program to help these farmers through that disaster and build a bridge to the future. And had we not done that, the growth that we've seen since then in agriculture wouldn't be there, because there would be so many people out of business. So we're looking at another situation like that this year. We've got to design a way to help build that bridge to the future. So we'll start working on that when the legislature gets back. And I can't thank Ricky enough for doing this tonight, but even more for the work that he's done with us in the department. And during that poultry time, being the contractor for us that helped us get all this composting done. And then I'll speak just briefly to a clandestine operation that he helped us with. During the pandemic, we had not a problem with agriculture, but we had a delivery problem to the grocery store. And stuff started backing up. We had farmers pouring milk out every day, and there was no milk on the grocery shelf. We had no pork on some of the grocery shelves, and yet the hogs had gotten too big to take to the processing plant. Same thing with chickens and turkeys, but there was bad press about some of the states and the way they had to euthanize hogs that were too big to process, and it ranged from hitting them in the head with a sledgehammer, shooting them, everything you can imagine. And I knew we had that same problem in North Carolina, the bigger hog state than we are. But I was not going to let this state take the reputation that these other states had taken. So we set out to design a humane way to euthanize these hogs and do it under veterinary medical specifications. It's never been done before in the whole United States or anywhere else in the world, but we came down to Ricky Temple's farm and we used some country boy engineering, and we started experimenting and figuring. And there were very smart people who said it couldn't be done. But Joe was standing right there with us the whole time, and we designed that equipment, we built that equipment, and in the end, we were able to put down 300,000 hogs that had to be euthanized, and we never wasted a one of them. All of them went to rendering, and they made pet food out of them. We are still the only state in the union that can do this. So we're much ahead of the curve, and we've had people from as far away as Australia call to want to have the know-how to do this. And of course, at some point, I will help my neighboring states, but I'm not going to send this technology to Australia, but it was designed and built on Ricky Temple's farm. So I can never say enough about that. Then when we went and do the job, it was Ricky once again standing right there helping us get that job done. when I finish this job, I'm going to write a book, and I can guarantee you that Ricky and his folks are going to get a whole chapter in it for what he's done, and I can't thank him enough, and I can't thank Joe enough either. We've been partners in some tough times, there's no question. The Food Safety Modernization Act, we actually, North Carolina actually helped to write that. We certainly had a big play in the implementation of the rules of that. And then Joe went off to work with FDA, and so while they was trying to beat on farmers out here, I had to be a confidant on the inside of that place. So we've been through some tough times, and thank you for what you are doing now.
Thank you, Commissioner. You know, the Commissioner has really been the right person at the right time. As he talked about the poultry, he talked about the swine. One little piece, Commissioner, that I don't want to miss. We had companies calling us every day saying half of our employees are not coming to work. We can't bring them in, we can't slaughter chickens because our employees are at home with COVID. Y'all remember COVID 2020? The very first state in the nation to put together teams, Commissioner led this, to take Department of Agriculture, local public health, state environmental health, and labor, and put a team together to go in these plants and walk through how to put processes in place to slow the spread of that virus so their employees could come back to work. Commissioner's vision was so that when we went in to do that, visited that plant, we left the paperwork there. The company took the notes. That way the news media and the press could not FOIA the notes of the regulatory programs. We let the company take the notes, and they were theirs, and there were no records to be had. But the goodwill of these people working to protect their employees and their families was the vision that the Commissioner had. Commissioner, as we ride around, we see farmland every day. We see them growing houses where we used to grow crops. One of the initiatives that you made when you came on board was farmland preservation. It's been something to you that's been personal to you. To keep agriculture land, growing food, a country that can't feed itself is a third world country. Can you talk a little bit about your vision on farmland preservation?
I came into office in 2005, and I had been a fairly large farmer in the Piedmont, and my farm is right in Greensboro's back door. So I had farmed, with people that didn't understand agriculture all my life, and I got along with my neighbors fine. I found out that when they needed some bush hogging done, or they needed their driveway straight, or the snow had them pinned in, if I went and helped them, most of the time, they had no problem with me. And the more that development came, the rougher it gets for farmers to be able to keep the land. And so my first thing to do, we were leading the nation in the disappearance of farms in 2005, and there was a reason behind it. We had moved on from the tobacco program. There were people getting out, they were transferring into other things, but we were leading the nation. Now, I am very proud of North Carolina, but leading the nation in the disappearance of farms was not something I was proud of. So I went to the legislature and got the Farmland Preservation Law rewritten, and included in that the creation of the Agriculture Development and Farmland Preservation Trust Fund, and began to get legislative funding for that trust fund. And since that time, using permanent easements, we have protected about 36,000 acres of farmland. We've used about $108 million doing that, but it's a drop in the bucket compared to what's happening in North Carolina now. We now are ranked number 2 in the nation by American Farmland Trust in the probability of the disappearance of farmland between now and 2040. They're talking about not a little bit, they're talking about 1.2 to 1.6 million acres of the 8 million acres that we have right now. Now, that's an economic disaster waiting to happen. Right now, our economic activity in North Carolina with agriculture is $111.1 billion. That's with a B. Much larger than any other industry in this state, but we can't do it if we don't have the natural resources. So The job is getting bigger. I'm at the legislature every year trying to get more funding for the trust fund, and I'm seeing the interest across North Carolina grow and grow. Wake County has already lost most of its farmland, but they recently did something that was outstanding. We have present use value in North Carolina, and if you're farming, an active farmer, and you own that land, or you own the land and you're renting it to somebody, you get a tax break on the county taxes. But if you sell that farm, you have to go back and pay the difference in the low tax rate and the high tax rate for 3 years back. Wake County is now taking that difference and putting it in a separate pot, and they're using that to protect the remaining farms that they have. And by doing this, they partner with us, and we can multiply the money that we have. We also have seen encroachment of our military bases in eastern North Carolina, and Oceana up in Virginia has been encroached on that so bad that they can hardly train their aircraft pilots up there. So we developed a program with the military, the 4 branches, and it's called Sentinel Landscapes. And we're using permanent conservation easements on farms to protect those military bases. When you train a fighter pilot, they don't fly way up there. They fly about the height of this building right here. So if there are high buildings, lights, towers, anything like that, it impedes that training. So they're picking where they need to have these training routes, and we're protecting those routes with conservation easements in partnership with the military. So we've got military money brought into doing this too. We're protecting farmland and protecting the bases all in one fatal swoop, and a farm is an excellent partner with the military, so it's been a great program. But we got to do a lot more. I've been told that just solar development in North Carolina has already taken about 100,000 acres of farmland, just solar. And with the amount of people that we're moving into North Carolina, it's going to get ugly if we don't step up the pace to be able to do that. My opponent, which I hate to even talk about with the lies and stuff that's going on, but she told a friend of mine the other day that it was all my fault that all this farmland was disappearing, that I should have been in the legislative building making sure that we had statewide zoning for farmland, and if you own farmland, you can never sell it for anything but a farm. Now, I've been a farmer myself and bought land with the sweat of my brow, and if you do that, you're taking 80-90% of a farmer's net worth right out the door. We have to use that land to be able to borrow money sometimes for farm inputs. We may want to buy another farm, and we may want to use that as part of the equity to do that. You can't do that. I'm a private property person from one end to the other, and what we're doing with this trust fund is we are trying to entice people to keep this land in farming, and at the same time take advantage of the value that is in that land for other purposes. It's the way to do it. I would never, ever think about zoning land for nothing but one use. When you do that, you've killed it. So we're not going to do that, are we? But we're going to continue to try to protect this valuable farmland. It's developing from the mountains to the coast, literally.
Commissioner, this is going to be one I know no one in this room knows about, and I'm going to talk about it till you tell me to stop, because I think it's important. But, tobacco is the staple crop that built North Carolina. When you look at the schools we have, the education, tobacco was Winston-Salem before Winston-Salem was anything else. It was tobacco. I met my wife, she was riding on the back of the tobacco setter. Her daddy said, son, you can date her when we get through planting tobacco. So I followed the setter and stuck a wooden peg in the ground when they missed the plant. But Commissioner, I saw you work on something behind the scenes that no one even knows about. So you share what you want. But he said, we want to grow tobacco in North Carolina. And we want to continue to grow. And this year I've seen more tobacco than ever. It's been unfortunate with the rains and when we got it, but early on we had some beautiful tobacco until the drought and then the heavy rains. But the reason North Carolina's planting more tobacco than ever before started with a trip that this man took to Washington, D.C., and I was fortunate enough to go along. And he said that the majority of tobacco in the cigarettes being used by the manufacturers in the United States today will be predominantly more American tobacco than it will be foreign tobacco. Commissioner, talk a little bit about China tobacco and what you did to ensure that tobacco in North Carolina would continue to be a foundational crop in agriculture.
Anybody that's been in the tobacco business as long as I have, that spanned some 50 years, know that we had a decline in the amount of tobacco that we could grow, and it was happening over and over and over again. And then we had the buyout, and it went to more of a free market, and it kind of stabilized there for a pretty good while. But the only way I knew that we would ever be able to grow more tobacco in North Carolina, or even hold the amount that we were able to grow, is we had to have a new customer come in to buy this tobacco, and about 80% of our tobacco goes to export now. So we took a trade mission, the first trade mission to China, and they were the ones that we knew that could do it. They've got more smokers in China than we have people in the United States, and their technology, the way they were growing it, was back in the 1930s, 20s or 30s, with oxen, water buffaloes, doing everything by hand, and the tobacco was awful. What we know was quality tobacco they had never seen and would never see doing it the way they did. So we spent a lot of time with China Tobacco International at that time, and got them interested in the United States. And in fact, I opened up a trade office in China just to make sure we stayed in touch with them. And along the way, we started exporting more poultry, more pork, soybeans, corn, and they became our #1 trading partner in the world. But tobacco was always at the forefront, and finally, after several trips to China, we were able to get China Tobacco to open a North American subsidiary, and it's right here in Cary, North Carolina. So immediately we kicked that demand part up for export of our tobacco, and we stabilized that market. But then came the pandemic and the trade wars. And during the trade wars, I probably made a mistake. I flew to Delaware to meet with the Chinese trade negotiator, and he was a good friend of the commissioner in Delaware, who has nothing to do with tobacco, but we were close friends, and he got me in front of him. And I made a big deal about it, about trade with them and tobacco and everything. And we thought we had that thing won. But I made such a big deal out of it, the Chinese actually believed that somebody other than us in Washington, D.C. cared about tobacco. So it got moved up to the top of the negotiating table. And it went on for 2 years, and in that 2 years, they bought nothing. So then the tobacco really tanked. But after the pandemic, we renewed the relationship. We've got them back in the market. Things have gotten better. And this year, we had more demand for this crop than we would have seen in a long, long time. And we planted more tobacco this year, and it's just a shame that it's been washed away, blown away. But we had that demand there, and that potential was there for the future. But it didn't happen overnight, and it took a lot of airplane miles. If I never sat on another airplane for 14 hours at a time, it'll be too soon. But we got it done, and I'm proud of that, and proud of the other markets that we've opened worldwide.
Commissioner, I'm going to pick up a little bit on your competition, and then we'll let you close this out. She's had a lot to say, and actually said it was a billion-dollar industry, that you can grow foods inside greenhouses, called controlled environmental agriculture. She said it was the #1 progressive industry in the world. What she failed to tell you is 8 of the last 12 recalls that's been in the United States has been associated with fruits and vegetables grown inside of a greenhouse. Oh. See, the good Lord put sunshine and the radiation and all the things to take care and kill some of these pathogens that can do us the worst harm. Now, there'll be a day when greenhouse productions can pay for itself. It didn't today. It costs more electricity to heat it and cool it and take care of the water supply than the profits of these houses are today. And so the good Lord looked after us when He created agriculture. It's here to stay, and she's talking about something she knows nothing about, but I do know a little bit about that. So, and today, 93% of all the seafood we eat in the United States is imported. 93% of the time when you eat seafood, you're eating products that did not be agriculturally produced or caught within 7 miles of the North Carolina coast or the United States coast. 93%. So over 50% of all the fruits and vegetables are imported today. A country that can't feed itself is a third world country. This commissioner has made food safety his top priority from the day he walked in, because he said bad food has no market. And so safe food. And you build a new agriculture science center, one of the premier laboratories in the world, because safe food is important. Commissioner, as we wrap this up, talk a little bit about your commitment to food safety and why everyone sitting in this room should give you your vote and make you the next Commissioner of Agriculture.
Joe, I thank you for teeing that one up, and this goes back a long ways. Not only was I a tobacco farmer, I was also a produce farmer. So I knew enough about safe food to really be dangerous. But when I got to the department, there were so many recalls that we were going through with agricultural products. Probably the biggest one in the beginning was, if you remember, don't eat Roma tomatoes. Well, it wasn't Roma tomatoes that were the problem. The problem we found out was actually contaminated jalapeno peppers, and we traced it all the way back to Mexico. But what happened was $250 million worth of tomatoes rotted on the vine because the government said, don't eat those tomatoes. And then it kept going and kept going, and in fact, we had a problem here in North Carolina that really spurred that on. And in the meantime, I had been elected the president of the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, so I had a national audience at that time, and I was able to help drive what the Food Safety Modernization Act was going to look like. And the thing that was the icing on the cake was we had two brothers producing cantaloupes in Colorado, the Johnson brothers, and they decided that they needed to wash their cantaloupes. We typically do that in North Carolina because we grow them outside on soil that sticks to the cantaloupes, so we need to wash them. But they washed the cantaloupes, and there was a pathogen stuck to the brushes in the machine they were using. So there was some sickness and some deaths from eating cantaloupe, contaminated cantaloupe. FDA normally what would happen, there would be a recall, and they'd get a slap on the wrist, they'd get inspected, and they'd go down the road. But they indicted these two brothers. They had no intent to hurt anybody, but it happened. But they got indicted on federal charges, putting adulterated food into the food systems, I think. So all of that added up to me understanding that food safety is an agricultural issue. Now, it's an issue with public health, but when you start losing millions and millions and millions of dollars because the food supply is not safe, we got a problem. So the approach we took with the Food Safety Modernization Act was, let's prevent it before it happens. And I initiated with Joe's help a national program called On-Farm Readiness Review. And what we did is, after the rules were written, and we were writing rules every week and fighting the FDA, but once we got those rules, we had voluntary teams that would go onto the farms and educate the farmers and processors about what this meant and what was expected of them in a non-regulatory way. And people took up to it. They took on to it. And from that, we've implemented that Food Safety Modernization Act with prevention in mind, not a recall. If we can stop deaths and illness by doing simple preventive things especially at the packing level, that's a better way to do business. So we've implemented that. And when Joe talked about what we did during the pandemic with the protein processors, we used exactly the same model that we had set up nationally for produce to go into these plants and do these inspections, and it worked. That's another chapter in the book, the pandemic and the things that we had to do, but people will never know how close we came to having no protein on the grocery shelves nowhere. I spent one whole day on the phone with CEOs of these processing plants, begging them, pleading with them to not shut the plants down. I mean, they were having 30% of the workforce come in to work. They were losing money hand over fist. The birds and the hogs were getting too large to process. So it was close, and in fact, Smithfield came about this close to shutting down the largest protein harvest facility in the world in North Carolina. So at the end of the day, at about 5 o'clock, I had a way to call the White House. It just so happened that Mark Meadows and I, Trump's chief of staff, were good friends from his time in Congress, and I had his cell phone number. So I made the call, and I said, Mark, if the president does not use the Defense Procurement Act to be able to get people back to work in these protein plants, we're going to starve to death. So other people called and said the same thing. The next morning, the president initiated the Defense Procurement Act, and we put people back to work in the facilities, and we averted a complete disaster. But in the meantime, we at the department worked with processors to sell the public what poultry and pork would have normally gone into institutional food. We've done shut down the restaurants, shut down the bars, shut down the schools, shut down the universities. That's 51% of the food consumed by the American public consumed outside the home. So we had to try to convert that institutional food into the grocery store, and it didn't work. What happened was, a package of institutional chicken is normally big chicken breasts packed in 30-pound boxes. Mm-hmm. So we started marketing that product directly to the public, and it was unbelievably successful. The first load of chicken that we ordered came to the Raleigh Farmers Market. Zane and I tried to get to our own farmers market to see how it was going. We couldn't get there. The roads were blocked. Everything was chaos. And they called me and said it took 45 minutes to get rid of that tractor trailer load. Now, what do we do? So I called and ordered 2 more tractor trailer loads. And about an hour later, we were sitting there waiting. 2 tractor trailer loads of chicken came in with a highway patrol escort with the sirens going and the blue lights going, and there were helicopters flying overhead filming all of it. And I looked over at Zane and I said, Zane, I have now been to my first chicken funeral. The end result was we were able to put 105 loads of that product out to the public, and even sold 5 loads of live hogs in the mountains. Those folks up there still remembered how to look out for themselves, so we did that too. But it was quite an experience. We had mayors, all the mayors in the large cities decided that landscape and nursery people couldn't work. And the argument was, well, they're outside. Why would you do this? But they were bound and determined, so I had to get on a conference call with all these highfalutin mayors, and I talked, and they never did relent. And I said, now listen, I'm going to put this in a way that you can understand. If you stop these people from working, your biggest population is going to be coyotes and rats and snakes. Is that what you want? And they said, we never thought about it that way. So the landscapers got to go back to work. We had people that in the grocery stores that would not let but one person come in. At the time, you could buy 1 gallon of milk, 1 loaf of bread. It's understandable. But we had migrant camps all across North Carolina that had maybe 200 people working them, and our proposal was that we want to send one person to do the shopping for the whole camp. Don't send 250 people in to spread COVID. It makes sense. So I started writing permits for people to go shopping for the migrant camps. Don't know that I had the legal right to do it, but it damn sure worked. They got to do that. And writing permits for people to go to work when there were curfews in place. We had people working in packing plants that they worked third shift. And so now there's a curfew, you can't get on the street, and so I wrote permits for people to go to work. Probably couldn't legally do that either, but it worked real good. So we got through it. But these are the kinds of things that we handle every day in the Department of Ag, and it's, I've got the best people in the world that work for us, and the only problem I have right now is we are 300 jobs open. I don't have the salary level to compete with private industry, and we're losing people to retirement, so it's tough right now. And we got a state fair coming up. So it's going to be all hands on deck, but I'm short a lot of hands, so we just got to do the best we can do. But this department has done a lot in my tenure as commissioner, both for the consumer and for the farmers of this state, and that's what I offer. And since I've been running, I've always, politicians, they'll promise you anything. Used to be a chicken in every pot. Can't do that. Can't promise a hog on every grill. Can't do that. But I can only promise you that you're going to get the best that I've got every day that I'm working in this job, and I hope to be successful in doing it. And I'm a street fighter, and I proved that over and over again. And what I'm going through right now is a lot of lies, a lot of lack of knowledge, and I'm having to be quiet about it. And quite frankly, I don't like it, but I promised my mother, I promised my community, and I promised my church I would never do a negative attack ad in my life, and I haven't. And I ain't going. But I can tell you I read some things on the way down here that made me think about it, but I'll be as good as my word. So I ask for your vote, and I ask for your support during this election. And, if you can just let people know that you've met me, but, ask them to just ask a farmer who they want in this position. It's only 2% of us, but we are feeding everybody. It was an eye-opening experience recently. Our National Guard in North Carolina does a lot of good things. And one of the things they're doing now is called the State Partnership Program. And their first partnership was with Moldova, which is right over at the Ukraine. So we're kind of keeping tabs on Moldova. But they also have added 3 South African countries, Botswana, and Malawi, and Zambia. And we brought them to North Carolina to get them to sign up to be American allies, and it's been written that I and the department don't normally do national defense work. We do it every day. We feed people. That's national defense. But we brought them over here, and all the highest level officials from these 2 countries were here, and I took them to my farm for a dinner that night. They were interested in agriculture because they don't have a food delivery system or production system like we do. I had dinner with 2 of the defense ministers of these countries, and they farmed, and their family farmed to be able to eat. And that's the way the whole countries are. If you don't farm, you don't eat. And there is worldwide an inverse relationship about the success economically of a country. How many people do you have working in agriculture every day? And that inverse relationship in the United States means 2% of us are feeding 98%, and the 98% can use their talents and go do what they do best. But in countries like this, there's not that choice. You farm every day to eat. So we brought them over and we talked ag to them and took them to A&T and NC State and then to dinner at my farm that night. But we knew they were an English-speaking Christian country, both of them. So the last thing that I did that night, I got Zane to go up and quieten the crowd down, and we had a group from Johnson County, the Wells family, and if you've never heard them, they are absolutely fantastic. It's 4 ladies that are in that band. He calmed them down, and I asked them to sing Amazing Grace, and every one of them started singing Amazing Grace. And then everybody else joined in, and I mean, it was tear-jerking. It was so fantastic. But that's the things we can do and the things that we enjoy doing, and if we can feed hungry people, it's good. Hungry people are mean people. Remember that. So that's the work we do every day, and I never get up and go to work. I feel like that I was put here to do this. It's not a day's work, no matter what. They're tough days, no question, but I'm always ready to get up every morning and go solve somebody's problem and fix something that's broke. So thank you for being here tonight. Thank you, Ricky, for everything that you've done for us and your friendship. And we get through this one and we'll continue down the road.
Believe it or not, I got some other politicians in the audience here.